Okay, good morning. Welcome to continuation of our revenue meetings. And we're in the middle of House Bill 203. And just committee, correct me if I'm wrong, but presented the bill. We are in the middle of public testimony. We heard from folks who couldn't be here yesterday. And then I think we were just getting back on. Then we had to go into session and go from there. And again, I just remind everybody, when we've got four spots up here to testify, always work through the chairman. The vice chairman is going to run the meeting today because it's, so I can be called on or make motions on the bill or those kind of things. And then it's actually, so she can run that and then I can try to manage the bill a little bit. So with that, Ms. Jeffrey, can you please call the roll? Thank you.
Good morning. Representative Baer.
Here.
Representative Byron.
Here.
Representative Locke.
Present.
Representative Northrup.
Here.
Representative Oakley.
Here.
Representative Storer.
Here.
Representative Strock.
Here.
Representative Zwanitzer.
Here.
Chairman Harshman.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to turn this over. We're on public comment on House Bill 203 and turn it over to the good Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, public comment, first of all, can I get an idea of who in the room would like to testify or testify again? So taxpayers, mining, assessors, Bill, Mr. Whitney. Okay. And then I think we've got some online. So I know the assessors were up here yesterday when we ended, but I don't care, I guess, at this point about who'd like to go first. So you guys want to decide amongst yourselves? Ms. Huxtable it is. Good morning. If you just say your name for the record, then proceed with testimony, please.
Madam Vice Chair and members of the committee, good morning on this early, bright morning. My name is Dixie Huxtable. I'm the Converse County Assessor, and today I'm representing the Wyoming County Assessors Association as our legislative chair. My comments will be brief. We can administer this bill as we go through the process of it and read it. For 2014, we do believe that we could administer. I think you heard the Director of Revenue state that as well. As county officials, we do have some concerns. We work closely with special districts in their budgeting processes when they're setting their mill levies. We do have some concerns for them. They're going to be using our certified value to set their mill levies and then relying to a certain degree on some backfill from sales tax to meet those requirements in their budget. So that would be the only concern we have for them, is walking through that process. And then the last comment that I guess we have is if there's a lot of property tax bills still out there, many of them are exemptions. We would like a little clarity when we get all done. If there's more than one exemption out there, what is going to be the proper order for us to administer? Because it probably does make a difference on how we do that. And I'm sure the department will have some of the same concerns, but we just, as we go through this list of massive bills, trying to make sure which ones are going to go in what order. With that, I would stand for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Huxtable. Have you thought about, like, let's say 45 is an exemption and 203 about, I mean, do you think that those would work well together? Or could?
Vice Chair, I honestly don't know. We have not got that far.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things still floating around, so I would hesitate to say whether we could or could not.
Okay.
Independently of anything else, we believe we could administer it, but and we certainly probably could administer it together. It's just which order goes first.
Okay. Thank you. Questions for the assessors and Ms. Huxtable? Chairman Harshman?
Good morning, Assessor. Thanks for being here. Just a question, I've heard people just in all these conversations say, well, geez, if you eliminate residential property tax, the assessors are just going to really jack the price, jack the valuations up, and it's going to go through the roof and nobody will be paying attention. And that's me kind of giving a little anecdotal comment, but that's, how do you respond to that?
Ms. Huxtable?
Madam Vice Chair, Chairman Harshman, Our job is to locate, value, and identify all taxable property in the state, in our jurisdictions. We are charged with being at fair market value, at least that's how it is currently. Obviously, legislation can change that. We have all types of property, not just residential. We have, as you all know, commercial, personal property, industrial. And so that's gonna be our job. We're still gonna value these properties just as we always have, to the best of my knowledge. We're gonna find fair market value on all of our properties and then apply the appropriate exemption, whether it's a percentage cap or some other type of an exemption. In this bill, we're gonna value it as normal and then apply whatever exemption is applicable by law. So we're still gonna have our jobs to do. And we aren't out there searching for more money. I know there's people think that's what we do. My job is to not find money for the county. My job is to find property and value it appropriately.
You follow up?
Okay. Well, go ahead, and then you can come back to me. Go ahead. Well, I had this, so I heard from some county officials that, and this was another comment, and I'll just say this to you, but this is gonna make our lives way easier because we're not gonna have near the tax sales on the courthouse steps. And not just even thinking of somebody's home, but even like, you know, a little $50 vacant property that's not really worth much, you know, but you still have to go through a process, you know. Any comments on that, or is that really not near? Go ahead.
However you'd like to respond, Ms. Huxtable.
Madam Vice Chair, Mr. Chairman, in my particular county, and I'm not going to speak for all counties, we don't have a lot of those tax sales as they're referring to selling on the courthouse steps. We are still going to be valuing them, and people are still going to be responsible for the taxes. A lot of times when they become delinquent in my county, it's because of a death, or somebody's passed away, or they couldn't afford the mortgage and therefore moved away. So we are still going to have the job to do. We are still going to have property taxes out there to assess and to collect. As far as the tax sale, that is out of my wheelhouse. That is a treasurer's discussion.
Right.
But we're still going to have work to do. And depending on how you interpret it, it could be more, it could be less.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Huxtable. Representative Locke.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you, Ms. Huxtable. Just a couple of real quick questions. So you were talking about the fact that you have to calculate the property to fair market value, but one of the questions I want to ask, I know it's a little side note on this, but I've been hit by this pretty hard, is how much of that fair market value calculation, how much is that impacted by the replacement cost issue? When you guys do your calculation, I know we've been over this before, but a little bit of this is me just trying to make sure I understand. How much of that is impacted? How much is the fair market value? Because I consider that different than replacement costs. And so can you just help me with that?
Ms. Huxtable.
Madam Vice Chair, Representative Locke, thank you for asking that question. They can be the same or they can be different, but typically we start with replacement cost new on all properties that we value. What would it cost to replace that property and then depreciate it for its appropriate depreciation? And then we look at the sales that are available for that type of property to determine if there's a market adjustment of some time that needs to go on that property to get to fair market value. Sometimes replacement cost new is fair market value, depending on what the sales indicate to us. On a residential property, it typically is not. There's usually some type of a market adjustment that gets applied to get to fair market value, and that is driven by sales. That is the process that we use. Typically, commercial properties are the more likely properties that are going to be at replacement cost new, less depreciation, because there are fewer sales to validate a market adjustment for it. We have cost tables that are provided to us through the Department of Revenue and our CAMA system, and that's the driver for the cost, the replacement cost. And then the depreciation is considered with different types, physical, economic, and functional depreciation. We have to consider all those. So those are all standard appraisal processes. And so for commercial, it turns out to be a lot closer to cost. People talk about being cost, just because there's usually not enough sales to establish a market adjustment with the various types of property that's out there. I hope that answered your question.
Follow-up, Representative Locke?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And then one last question. So let's just say that 45 and this bill were to pass. So imagine the concept would be that your assessment approach would be to follow the guidance of 45, House Bill 45. And that would, and as I would understand it, and I'm kind of asking the assessor, and certainly I welcome the thoughts from the bringer of the bill, of course, because he knows this is better, but the concept, at least as I would understand it, would be that we would use the baseline of 45 for how you would calculate what you're owed, if you will, for the payback. And so I'm just trying to understand, does that process sound like something that you could administer?
Ms. Huxtable?
Madam Vice Chair, Representative Locke, I believe so. Obviously, there's a lot of moving parts in this, but fundamentally, we're going to set a fair market value on the property, first and foremost, even with 45. And then you're going to use the guidance in 45 to apply the limit or the excess over the 5% increase, if there is. Let me be very clear. It's not an automatic 5% increase in 45. It's whatever the fair market value is, whatever excess is over the prior years, and then that becomes the excess that becomes the exemption. So I would believe, I mean, my theory tells me that we would start with that and then apply any other exemptions after that that would be approved by this body. I just don't know because we haven't been able to work through them all. There's a few too many parts to figure it all out, but we would certainly ask for guidance from this body and or the Department of Revenue to give us guidance on that.
Thank you. Follow-up, Representative Locke?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And one last question, because you brought up a very good point. So your understanding of 45, I'm sorry, I don't mean to deviate too much, is that, for example, if the assessment is 2% higher, it's you go to the assessed value. Whereas if it was, which is 2% higher, let's just say you assess that today, this year you assess it 2% higher. So the 2% would be the assessment value rather than an automatic 5%. Your interpretation is the 2% would be the right number. If it was 8%, then it would be limited at 5%. Did I describe that accurately to your understanding?
Ms. Huxtable?
Madam Vice Chair, Representative Locke, yes, that is exactly how I would interpret it, that if the property, the residential structure went up 2%, it's going to go to that new value. If it was to increase by 8%, it would be limited to a 5% increase.
Thank you, Ms. Huxtable. And I'm just going to say, we have given ourselves a lot of time, but not unlimited time, so let's stay on 203. Representative Bear.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. On 203 now. So 203, we talked yesterday with the director, excludes outbuildings. We know that it excludes commercial properties and residential properties that are larger than a single-family structure. I just would like to know from your experience, Ms. Huxtable, as an assessor, you know your customers, what kind of angst is that going to create? I realize that what's going to happen if we get this passed is it's going to go out far and wide. Everyone will know that there's a good chance they won't have a property tax bill. But then some people are going to get a property tax bill based on their outbuildings, based on, you know, their commercial rather than residential, or that are larger than a single family structure. I know it's theoretical, but what do you think that's going to look like in your office?
Ms.
Madam
Huxtable, if
Vice
you know.
Chair, Representative Bear, it's going to take some education out of my office and some communication to my taxpayers to explain what this bill or whatever bill passes does. And you're correct, it does, as it's stated, is residential, single-family property. I know very few properties in my county that do not have an outbuilding, quote unquote, an outbuilding, what we call a shed, a detached garage, a barn, a shop. those are going to be still taxable and not eligible for the exemption. So it's going to take education on my part. Will there be concerns and questions? Absolutely. It's been my experience that the more time we can spend with our taxpayers explaining it, the better off they are and they understand it. They may not like it, but they will understand it if we share that education. And that's what I see is going to have to happen.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Huxtable. I just wanted to say thank you for being here with us the entire time. You have been here the entire time. We appreciate your knowledge, your expertise, and going on this marathon with us.
Thank you. And I have brought our association president with me, Mel Schinkel from Teton, if she has some comments for you.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Schinkel.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Melissa Schinkel, Teton County Assessor. I did just want to address the comments regarding, this will alleviate the job of the assessor. In my particular county, or minimize, I suppose, in my particular county, I don't have many houses under $1 million. Condos, maybe. And so certainly in some instances and possibly in some of their counties, the process will still have to be done, for sure. So it really will not eliminate the workload.
Thank you, Ms. Schinkel. I think we might have increased it really. So here, you figure this out. Chairman Harshman.
Good morning, Assessor Schinkel. What is the average now in Teton? We keep hearing so many different words. Is it around 2 million or 3 million for a home? Thank you.
Ms. Schinkel.
Madam Chair, Representative Harshman, when I pulled my report the other day, we have a lot of permitting and affordable housing mitigation fees, et cetera, that are calculated from that median. It was 3.9 million.
Wow.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so 4 million basically.
Yes.
Well, this will be a 25% tax cut.
Yes, Representative Harshman, we joked the other day, but I do think this is a very interesting concept, and I appreciate you bringing it forward.
Well, thank you. And boy, if I somehow inferred that I was really, because I hear this stuff, well, they're just going to jack the prices up now because nobody's really paying for it, blah, blah, blah. And I thought, that's not the way the law works. It's a thing called the Constitution. And so that's why I wanted to bring that forward.
Sure.
So,
And,
thank you.
Ms. Chair,
Ms. Schinkel.
sorry, Madam Chair, members of the committee, in regards to the replacement cost, again, that's varying a lot per county, where some counties are truly valuing on cost for what that valuation manual predicts for that home to be replaced. But in other counties, mostly Teton, of course, we have like a 4-5 time multiplier on that number. So those, even though we're starting at that same replacement cost, that is where we get into the differences of cost by county and how those are calculated.
All right, Representative Storr.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. A question for both you, Mel and Dixie. The good bringer of the bill, Mr. Chair, has suggested that this bill will alleviate property tax for 97% of homeowners in Wyoming. To your point, Ms. Schinkel, that would not be the case in Teton at all. I'm just curious if you've looked at the numbers to see who would be left paying property tax on residential properties in Wyoming. Thank you.
Ms. Schinkel or Ms. Huxtable?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Representative Storr, yes, like I said, I think for the other 22 counties, it would significantly reduce property tax for most everyone in the state. In our county in particular, again, even the average 90-year-old, we call them our East Jackson ladies, their homes are in excess of $2 million right now. But I do see a benefit in if the exemption, so to speak, is up to $1 million, that certainly will cut theirs in half as well. So I do see benefits either way. But certainly many of our residents would have a much larger tax to still pay.
All right, thank you. Okay, so looks like Wyoming Taxpayers Mining Association, come on up. And Wham, that's great, if all three of you will come up. Good morning. I don't know if you want to just go ahead and introduce all three and of yourselves and then proceed from there. So Ms. Harpsworth.
Good morning, Ashley Harpstreet, Executive Director, Wyoming Taxpayers Association.
Good morning, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Travis Deti. I'm the Executive Director of the Wyoming Mining Association.
I'm Bob McLaurin with WHAM.
All right, Miss, are we going to start with taxpayers? Sure.
So Wyoming Taxpayers Association is a 501c4 think tank with a 501c3 research arm. We are not anti-tax, we are not pro-tax. Our mission is to advocate for sound tax policy for a healthy Wyoming economy. WTA believes sound tax policy is framed by a tax structure that is justified, equitable, stable, and transparent. With this in mind, we appreciate the change in concept of this bill, and it tries to address the high residential valuation. However, there are several issues that need to be addressed. House Bill 203, Property Tax Reduction and Replacement Act, is not justified as it has a direct nexus with large industrial taxpayers and Wyoming employers. This will be a significant tax increase, causing a shift in tax burden. This bill will modify behavior as it will influence large industrial and commercial industries with the increase in sales tax. Not only will this impact spending decisions for those investing in million-dollar purchases, but sales tax is regressive and will cause an undue burden on those even contemplating buying diapers. This consideration is not equitable because, as I mentioned, this is regressive. A low-income renter will not benefit. Additionally, even though as funds are available, there will be a rebate to those who pay severance taxes, there will still be an offset of tax burden as their vendors will incur this 2% tax increase, thus passing the tax along to our largest taxpayers. Madam Chair, the biggest reason we cannot support this concept at this time is it is not stable or sound tax policy. This bill will take revenue from a stable revenue source in our tax code, which will result in making the tax structure even more unstable as a whole. Wyoming's tax structure is already unbalanced, and this exemption will further erode the tax base and shift the cost of critical services to other taxpayers, and while limiting local government's ability to raise revenues. Finally, this is not transparent as this tax could be costly to administer and collect. This requires growth in state government as it requires almost a $300,000 fiscal note, including additional staffing. Industries will have the burden to offset their taxes paid and will require more to receive the rebate. I leave you with these questions we are trying to resolve. If implemented, is this constitutional? As this bill provides an exemption for one tier but not the other. Additionally, as mentioned in previous testimony, the state is obligated to pay for the K-12 education system in an equitable manner. Will the Supreme Court deem sales tax as equitable? Madam Chair, we appreciate the desire for action and urge the committee to flesh this idea into the interim. WTA stands ready to assist in the evaluation of proposals in the interim that address the unbalanced nature of our tax structure and that are low and broad-based. Our suggestion is to do a comprehensive study of the tax structure similar to Tax Reform 2000, created by the 1997 Senate Enrolled Act 56. If the legislature goes down this path, it could be taken up in the interim, much like a select committee that can focus solely on this topic at hand. With that, Madam Chair, as we were in the late 1990s, we stand ready to assist. Thank you. I'll stand for questions.
Thank you. I've got a question for you. You just mentioned the K-12 funding and that it needs to be equitable, and so questioning the constitutionality. But I mean, is it your understanding that when the Supreme Court has done those cases, that's in reference to how it's how much and how it's delivered to schools rather than how the tax is collected. Would that,
Madam Chair, that is a good consideration, but with sales tax having ups and downs sometimes, that was where we were wondering if it would be equitable and there'd be consideration around that.
questions for Ms. Harpstreet? Representative Bear?
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Ms. Harpstra, I appreciate your being here. You made quite a few statements there that I'm just going to ask you one to kind of clarify. Do you believe that if the state had a spending policy that restricted growth to something that was, tied to maybe our population or population plus inflation, do you think that would help in this situation?
Madam Chair, Representative Bear, that would be an interesting concept to consider, but I'm not able to comment on that at this time. We do believe in strong fiscal policy and a spending policy that we do have posted on our website.
All right, Representative Storr?
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Thank you, Ms. Harpstra. To your point of the volatility of sales tax, let's say we have a recession, that probably means that sales tax will be down kind of across the board. And so what are the options for making that up for education? Does that mean we just need to take funding out of savings or just cut education?
Madam Chair, Representative Storr,
Go ahead.
that is a policy consideration on the spending side that the legislature would be burdened with.
Thank you. Chairman Harshman?
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Just to, kind of thinking back to tax reform 2000, and of course that was a different time. We were flat broke and the recommendation was really an income tax. A lot has changed, in the last quarter century. I mean, I think back then the permanent trust fund gave us about 3% of our revenue. Now it's 30%, which is kind of that third leg. It's really incredible. But back to education funding, I think we fund education like every state with property taxes. And I think the issue in Wyoming is who pays the property taxes? It's the mineral guys. And that's why education funding, that's why we're always in an education funding crisis, is because the stability of education funding is based on the price of coal and oil and gas. And so, and I think the thing that has really changed in the last 7 or 8 years, and I'm just talking kind of, and I'm going to ask if you agree or not at the end, but the thing that has changed sales tax is the online sales tax. It's changed the whole game. And the sales tax volatility used to be because it's based on minerals. A lot of it used to pay as high as 20, 25%. Now minerals is underneath tourism now. And so I think there's been so many dramatic changes in the last 10 years and 20 years, I think. My final comment really on that school funding is the Supreme Court, it's not about local wealth. Right, the Campbell decision said the coal in Campbell County isn't just Campbell County School District, it's all the children of the state. That's why we recapture those dollars. Same with the Teton property taxes. Teton's the new Campbell now with recapture. And so it's all a state system. And I would think a state sales tax would pass that same muster because it's spread across the wealth of the state. So do you agree with that?
Madam Chair, Chairman Harshman, just to slightly push back, this is why we think this is a complicated issue that we believe could have some merit and should be discussed in the interim to look at those revenues and what those numbers would look like.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mining Association, I'm sorry. Representative Locke?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Ashley, for coming here. I really appreciate that. Just a real quick question concerning two things. You recommended an interim because it is true, this is very complicated. It's a forklift change, and so the interim, obviously. But question for you was, I slipped a bit. I'm sorry. I had a question that completely went away, but thank you for bringing the attention of that interim discussion because, oh, yeah, real quick question that I had asked yesterday was, do you believe that this increase in the sales tax, I think often it's considered as going to be kind of a linear increase in sales tax, and your perception of that, I believe that you increase the sales tax by a little bit, that it's not a linear increase, it's more of there's going to be a rounding off of that curve, if you will, because people will manage their sales. And I was just wondering what your thoughts were on that.
Ms. Harpstree?
Madam Chair, Representative Locke, I think that's what needs to be contemplated and thought about further. Yes, there is some rebates as funds are available to our legacy industries, but there's going to be a large impact to very large industrial consumers, such as pipelines, that make huge purchases within the state and would drive up revenue. They might be purchasing out of state now to bring that product in to build, and we might miss out on, it might just modify behavior, and that's something that I think deserves more time and testimony from companies in large industries this is gonna affect. Also, the regressivity of this, and we love consumption-based taxes, but there's just a lot to contemplate when you're decreasing one lever and pulling on another. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Detail.
Good morning, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. Again, Travis Detail with the Wyoming Mining Association. And since I haven't had the pleasure of addressing the Revenue Committee for quite a while, I would just like to remind everyone, we represent the state's coal producers, the state's trona and natural soda ash producers, uranium, bentonite, and we also represent companies currently exploring and developing rare earths, gold. We have lithium going now, and we're very excited about that. Madam Chairman, when Chairman Harshman caught me in the hallway the other day and told me about his bill and asked me to shop it around to our membership, I took that, and we are doing that right now. I did get out of about 30 companies, I've got 2 responses back right now, because this is and I will quote from, it's an interesting bill, but it's a little bit cumbersome. And so we've got folks looking at it right now, and I think I would put the context of my comments in like this, is we would like some more time. And that's where I'll go. A couple of the things that have come up with some of the comments that I did receive, as Ms. Harpstreet kind of already alluded to, one of the main things that came up first is appreciate the intent and the desire to make industry whole with refund or rebate, I don't know which term you would use, on their increase in sales taxes applied to whatever the excess amount would be. But the upfront cost, from one trona operator, it would represent a $1 million tax hike, and they would be required to ask for the refund for $1 million. And at a minimum, they will be required to outlay that money rather than using it for day-to-day mining operations in the short term while they're asking for applying for the refund. And that's pretty concerning to our operators. And with the addition of having to apply for the refund, that represents additional administrative costs and burden for an operator. And that's one thing that's come up. The second thing, as Ms. Harpstreet noted, that I have heard back from one of our coal operators is, aside from the direct impact of having to do your outlay, but on the stuff that you're buying, your vendors are going to be paying sales tax, an increase, and there's concern that that's going to get passed on to the operator. And I think an example would be, say, an equipment company that needs to come out and do service on your equipment. I mean, they have to buy trucks, they have to buy supplies, and that's going to be passed on to the operator. And then the concern is I don't know how, if we could pass those, if our operators could pass those costs on to their customers, that's going to be, they're going to be increasing those costs, and that's going to reduce competitiveness. And so that's a concern as well. And then, and then again, the other thing is, and I will quote this, well, I don't have numbers in front of me, and that's a reason why we would ask for more time to look at this proposal and see if we could work on it and address some of these questions. And, just a little we're operating under very, very tough regulatory and market conditions. There's no question about that. Everyone in this room knows that. Not just our coal, but our soda ash and our other industries as well. And frankly, I don't foresee those getting better in the near future. I mean, you're writing our obituary right now on our coal side, but we're still alive, but it's tough. It's a tough regulatory environment. And I think, you know, when you're talking about the initial outlay and then waiting for the refund, which as the bill is written right now, you know, it's assuming there's money to have the refund. And I understand, Madam Chairman, Chairman Harshman, that you're looking to fix that with some backfill so that the money is actually there so that it can be counted on. We appreciate that. But, you know, say for example, I've got a company right now in the Powder River Basin that's looking at investing in new haul trucks. Again, I say, we're not dead. We're still up and running and we're doing, you know, swinging away. And just a couple of figures to cite for you, you know, the estimated cost for a haul truck is $7 million. Well, this company is looking at investing in 5 of those. And if you do the tax, you know, back of the number, napkin and math, you know, for $35 million worth of haul trucks, the sales tax today is $1.4 million. You know, you go, you know, as if the bill, you know, goes through, you know, that bumps it up to $2.1 million. That's an increase of $700 million. That doesn't sound like much, but, you know, a million here, a million there, you're talking real money. But where that happens and, you know, having to wait to get that rebated, in the meantime, you know, my coal operators don't get paid until the coal gets to the power plant. And if you find yourself in a situation where, you know, the trains aren't running on time, which, you know, we're still dealing with consistency of train service, and something happens, you know, you put that outlay out for new trucks and you're not getting paid on time. And, you know, the immediate burden of having, you know, to shell that out, it's pretty tough. So I guess I would end my comments with this was, you know, we appreciate the effort and, you know, understand we've got some real tax issues in this state. You know, we're over reliant on minerals and we are willing to, you know, to take a look at this. But I think our position, Madam Chairman, would be for the committee to spend some more time on this. We would certainly support and would be willing to work with the committee in the interim on this.
Thank you, Mr. Detay. Questions? Chairman Harshman?
Question, thank you, Ms. Detay. I've kind of taken notes. So the way this refund, that's rebate on that 2 pennies is at the end of the year. So you would prefer like, you know, a 30-day turnaround or a 45-day turnaround. Hey, you buy this and here's our 800,000 rebate. I think it's probably easier on the department too, instead of having a massive rush at the end of the year. So I wrote that down as a potential amendment.
Mr. Chairman, I think that would Madam Chair, that would absolutely be an improvement. I think we'd like to see it quicker. And if there was a way you could do a formula or something we would certainly like to see it quicker because, you know, as I mentioned, I think the example of the trains running on time is, you know, there's not a lot of leeway, and they're working on very tight margins.
Just
Follow up, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, and you know, the reason we can't have separate rates, obviously, is we're a streamlined sales tax state. So, but I think your idea of, you know, a quicker turnaround on that, because we do that in sales tax anyway, around, you know, that's how we collect it right away. So that's a good idea. Appreciate it. Thank you.
And Madam Chair, I
Mr.
think
Detay?
since you're doing sales tax on a monthly basis or severance tax, that could be an improvement, I think.
Thank you. Representative Storr?
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Thank you, Mr. Dede, for your comments. I can't help but notice that you mentioned that we are over-reliant on minerals already. And so my concern is that this exacerbates that. Would you agree with that statement?
Mr. Detay?
Madam Chair, I would say it makes it pretty tough. We are over-reliant on minerals and, you know, you're going back to the well in the short term at least. Madam Chair, absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Representative Baer?
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Mr. Detay, thank you for being here. You know, obviously there's a carve out for your industries in this particular bill. Do you have any concerns with that going away, if you will, over time? if we don't have some sort of spending controls in place. You know, we're growing our government on a daily basis without any kind of tie-in to population or inflation or anything else. We're just kind of, whatever the revenues come in, we spend it, and that leads to a growth and a growth in burden, if you will.
Mr. Dite.
Madam Chairman, Representative Bear, I would answer this way. As an individual taxpayer, as a lifelong resident of this state, I like that minerals pay the bills. And so I would leave the policy decisions up to the body. But you know, anything that can be done in the long term to ease that burden, I think would be acceptable. We would certainly appreciate that. I don't know if I answered your question or not, Representative Bear. I kind of danced around it, but you know, the policy decisions are meant for our elected officials.
Thank you. Representative Locke.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for coming and testifying. Real quick, if you could just talk with me about your concerns with being competitive. You know, how much does that 2 cents impact that? I would be very curious to get your feel for that.
Madam Chairman, that's an excellent question, Representative Locke. It's a huge concern. On the energy side, you know, our coal, we are competing with low-cost natural gas. We're very dependent on the price of gas. When natural gas is above $3 is kind of our sweet spot, then Wyoming coal is competitive. But we're also competing with, you know, renewables that are heavily subsidized and receive strong regulatory favor from the federal government. So that's out there. So, you know, keeping our costs down so that we can be competitive is very important on the coal side. On the soda ash side, we are in cutthroat competition with the Chinese and natural or synthetic soda ash, to the point to where, you know, we're talking pennies right there. You know, I think we've got some advantages for natural soda ash over synthetic soda ash in China, and but it's very competitive. Our bentonite that we are, you know, we've got world-class resources here right in Wyoming. You know, we're the nation's leader in the production of bentonite, but our competition comes from Chinese bentonite. So, you know, keeping those operating costs down so that we can be competitive and, you know, and keep paying the taxes and keep employing people. I mean, it's very, very important.
Thank you, Mr. Dite. Okay, and is it Mr. McLaren? Is that?
Yeah, Bob McLaurin with Wham. You heard a lot of our concerns that was expressed by the county commissioner, by Jeremiah yesterday, in that regard to making the 5th and 6th cent harder to pass. Right now, 93 of the 99 cities and towns rely on that 5th cent revenue. Some use it for capital construction, others use it to pay the police department and firefighters. About 40 of our communities rely on the 6 cent specific purpose or economic development taxes. So we're very concerned that if you raise the state sales tax, that it's going to make those optional taxes very difficult to pass. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McLaurin.
Question.
I've got to spit this out. Chairman Harshman.
No. Thank you, Mr. McLaren. You know, and when Mr. Riemann was here yesterday, we talked about, you know, those 3 local pennies, and we're looking at it from a county perspective, so I appreciate the municipalities basically the same, you know, 21 out of 23 counties and 93 out of 99 municipalities. And so if we were to, you know, make that 5th penny permanent and then, but take away the 3rd local penny, you know, you have 3 pennies now options, but then, so we talked about that briefly yesterday, and so I've got that amendment prepared for the committee if the committee wills it, but the other question I had, you know, I'm just thinking back to my own community, you know, you can also use property tax for a specific purpose, go to the voters, like you go to them with a 6th penny to build a new swimming pool in your town, but you could also go for, hey, 2 mills for the next year to build this swimming pool. So you have a couple options, right?
That's good, Madam Chair.
Mr. McLaren.
Representative Harshman, that is correct, but many of our smaller communities in particular are maxed out at 8 mills already. But you could do a GO bond like that.
Right.
If you weren't assessing your full 8 mills. But if you're at the cap, I'm not sure you could go over that cap, even for a GO bond.
For a specific purpose bond.
You could,
okay.
specific purpose, yeah.
Yeah, so.
Chairman Harshman?
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. Okay, so that's a question. And that's a good, I need to know. So 8 mills, most of our communities are at 8 mills unless they've got special purpose things. But, so can you go to the voters then for a specific purpose mill, like to build a new library in Casper? We tried that and I think we were at 8 and 12. Voters rejected it, but it was a property tax proposal, so it must have been I'm just trying
Madam
to
Chair,
think.
I'm not qualified to speak to that. I think that's a legal issue, whether you could go over that 8 mills if you're already at
Yeah.
the cap for a GO bond. I do not believe you could, but I'm not an attorney.
Maybe your department knows that too, so thank you.
Madam Chair, I would
Madam Chair.
concur with my colleagues up here that it's an interesting concept. As a property owner in Teton County, I'm very excited about this bill. But I think it's something, and I really do appreciate the chairman's efforts to look out for the cities and towns, but I think it's a topic that's well suited for the interim. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. McLaren? All right,
Madam Chair.
Mr. Dita?
I forgot when I was answering Representative Locke's question, we mine uranium too. And I would be very remiss, and I would probably take a butt chewing if I didn't mention that, our uranium, we are in pretty strong competition with foreign uranium as well. And so, keeping the cost down for the operating cost down to take advantage of the upcoming uranium boom is critical as well. So I appreciate it.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. I see Petroleum Association in the room. Are you wanting to testify? Okay. If you would introduce yourself and then proceed with testimony, please.
Okay, Madam Chairman, my name is Rob Hendry. I'm the president, or the chairman of the Business Alliance. Businesses make Wyoming better. And I'm a little worried about some of the areas of this legislation. Get it pulled up in here. The paybacks for companies are going to be really tough. It looks to me like, and one thing that I didn't understand, and I hate to wordsmith something, but in the distribution on the paragraph that starts out with the 2 double I's, it says any person who pays severance taxes, and it probably ought to say any person or entity that pays severance taxes, because companies pay those severance taxes. So I wondered a little bit about that. I think that I was a county commissioner for 16 years in Natrona County. To figure this out, I think they're going to have some people in that office to help figure this out. I think that the state Department of Revenue is going to have some extra people to help figure this out. This is a very complicated system. I wrote down a couple of things. You guys talked about the 1 cent, and Chairman Harshman talked about it in Casper, or in Natrona County. Well, I think we tried to pass a 1 cent or an extra cent 3 times while I was commissioner. And 2 times for the library, and then 1 time for the water line to Midwest and Edgerton, and a street to the state building. Boy, the voters did not like it. They don't like sales tax. And I always thought that sales tax was a pretty good thing, that because people coming into town, tourists and everything else coming through, they help pay it. But the voters in those counties don't think that. And I think when you tell them that, well, you're not going to have to pay property tax anymore, I think that would sure help that. You know, it's, you start out with, you're not gonna have to pay any property tax, but you have to pay a little sales tax. I think that would be good, but to pass another 1 cent or those tax proposals in the future might be really tough. But those are just a couple of ideas, Madam Chairman, that the Business Alliance, well, another one, our members, we also have solar and wind as membership in our, our alliance. And wind doesn't pay severance tax, so there's no really way to get anything back to them. And I'll tell you, they pay a lot of sales tax and they pay a lot of property tax. I can remember not too long ago that neighboring county, Converse County, they were struggling, but they got a lot of wind towers. And now with the sales tax that was paid and the wind that's going on and that property tax, they're in good shape now. So wind is pretty important to those counties, that value of that. So it affects all kinds of energy, not just oil and gas. And mining, it sure affects them. And oil and gas, it would affect them. I'm also a contractor. And when I put in my sheets, I'd put them in manually every month, what the work that I've done out there. And it's not a big deal, but I put them on one sheet, whatever I build out in Natrona County and whatever I build out in Fremont County. But on that sheet, it doesn't say who paid that tax. It just says that was the bills I sent out to 4 different companies. And so I may have to start putting that out, or the companies, I mean, they pay every 2 months maybe, sometimes. For them to figure out how much sales tax they've paid is going to be tough for those companies too. Just a few thoughts.
Great, thank you, Mr. Hendrick. Any questions? All right,
Thank you.
and how many, I am backwards. How many people are online? We have 2. What's that? With their hands up. So, Mr. Winnie, if you want to go ahead and come up. Should I take one online?
Madam Vice Chair,
go
Bill
ahead.
Winnie, Sublette County. I believe you're obligated to do something like this for at least some of the people of Wyoming. You're struggling with taxes with the tentacles of inflation as they work their way around. But if I understood Chairman Nicholas correctly the other day, he explained to you why state employees couldn't get a cost of living adjustment. And that's a big deal. And that's probably one of the reasons you need to be looking at something like this. I've spoken before about my own retirement from the Navy. It has a cost of living adjustment. If you take it from when I retired in 2002 to 2022, my income doubled. That's the effect of the long-term calculation for cost of living. And so if you look at individual families trying to get through as inflation rises up underneath them, they're struggling. My VFW post recently looked at employee salaries that they have, and they hadn't had a pay raise in like 8 years. And if you go back and look last year, the cost of living adjustment was like 3.2%. The year before, 8.4, I think it was. The year before that was 4.5%. That whacks away at their ability to pay taxes. And so if you're not going to put in place a COLA for your state retirees, and I got it, I understand the math, I understand Chairman Nicholas's explanation, but you're then in turn, I believe, obligated to do something like this for those people. Subject to your questions, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Winnie. Okay, briefly, Representative Bear.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Mr. Winnie. I've asked this question of some of the lobbyist organizations, but I'll ask it of you as a private citizen. What are your thoughts about the government having some sort of spending controls to help aid in future increases in taxes, both property, sales, and potentially an income tax?
Well, I think it's
Mr. Winnie?
probably a good idea. Early on in my, Madam Chairman, or Madam Vice Chairman, early on in my career in the Navy, as I was learning to manage refits and work and everything on submarines, I discovered that work expanded to fill the time available. And one of the things I did when I finally got to be a commanding officer was I went to the chief's quarters and said, okay, your people are not obligated to stay here just till Liberty Call just because they don't have anything to do and they're going to go find it. And so I gave the chiefs the ability to send people home early in the day that they felt appropriate. My productivity went through the roof. 2 ships, one was a major, one was a submarine, one was a major repair facility out in the island of Guam. Well, one of the lessons I learned that's a parallel to your thinking is I observed how the Pentagon works. And I had 3 tours in the Pentagon doing acquisition programs. Was spending rises to fill the money available. And that's exactly what you're getting at, Representative Baer, Madam Vice Chairman, and Representative Baer, is how do you control spending? I first started observing the legislature in 2005. And that's about the time when your income from minerals started up significantly. I liken it to a pig in a boa constrictor where it just went up and your spending went up. And I observed a few years ago an attempt by the then president of the Senate, Bebout, to pull the reins in. And I observed the Speaker of the House and the governor gang up on him and go ahead and increase some spending. And so, yeah, should there be a limit? I think there should be. How do you do that? That's tough. There's always good reasons to expend more money. Subject to your questions, Madam Vice Chair, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Winnie. I'm just going to say now, we have limited time, and before we go to session, we're in session, we are going to stay on the bill, and both questions and comments about 203. So will you let me know who is online?
Madam Chair, we have Emily Paravicini, and Brett Glass with their hands up. Would you like me to admit them?
Yes, please. And we'll start with, now you did it to me, how do you say it?
Paravicini?
Paravicini, I should
Saying it
know
correctly?
too, but yes, she's the treasurers. Can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can, perfect. Will
All
you
right.
introduce yourself and proceed with testimony?
Good morning, Revenue Committee. Again, this is Emily Parvasini, Sublette County Treasurer and President of the County Treasurers Association. I have emailed a few of the members as this meeting has taken a long time for me to actually get to this point. So I appreciate your time. The county treasurers would like just a little bit of guidance on the bill. Currently, that 4% sales tax that we receive is not distributed. It is county funds that go into our general fund to be used for county expenses. The implementation of this 2% then would need to be distributed. And our question would be, do we need to use the 6 mil distribution that changes every year, or would we be able to get that information from the county assessors that would say this amount needs to go to this district and this amount needs to go to this district, or this percentage? So if we could get a little bit of guidance on how that 2% would be distributed, so that it makes sure it gets to the right districts. You know, Sublette County has 2 districts, but Bighorn County has 1,000. So we would need a little bit of guidance on how the distribution would need to take place for that extra 2%. The bill reads that the county treasurer would be the requesting party for the funds that were exempted, but we would get that information from the assessor's office when we roll taxes. Most counties, I know we by statute need to have the taxes rolled by the 1st of September, which is what the date is for that ask from county treasurers for the exemption amount. And I know that sometimes, I think Natrona County recently had some struggles with that with a new assessor. So I don't know if we would like to have that date pushed back to maybe the 15th of September, or if we're all good with having that date be the 1st, which is essentially the date when we roll taxes from the assessor's office. Again, this bill is for residential property and the associated land, so I don't know if you want or need to define the amount of land that is included with that. And everyone assumes that there won't be a tax bill, but I think as Assessor Huxtable relayed, we're still going to have outbuildings. There's still going to be probably a certain portion of the land that's not included in this exemption. And then all the special districts. So not everyone has the same amount of special districts on their bills. So if you're in a particular mosquito district or irrigation district or special improvement district, you're going to have probably, as we see it, a bill for those special districts that you'll have to pay. You won't necessarily be paying property taxes, but you'll be paying those fees for those special districts on your bill. And with that in mind, Madam Vice Chairman, if those then don't become paid, that is what would go through the tax sale, is those district payments, special district payments that didn't get paid. Also, the other thing I would like to ask also is that as the other exemption bills have gone through, we would like to know if we could get the amount of the exemption on the bill itself, the bill that we would send out, so that it spells out the amount of exemption that's on each tax bill. I don't know if that would be required to be in statute, but I know that we would like to see that on our tax bills. And then, I'm sorry, the last thing I wanted to say is, I know that some people, and I've had people ask me as well, about, rising the values to fulfill the need that the property taxes would be filling. And there would be no reason for that to happen because they are still getting backfilled. We're just backfilling it ourselves rather than having the state backfill us. And schools, especially, since a large portion of the property taxes that we collect as county treasurers, those funds get distributed approximately within 30 days of collecting. So everything that we collect in November, when we have that first half payment due, would then be distributed in December. So the schools are used to getting a big chunk in December, a big chunk in January, and a big chunk in June, right after those payment schedules that we're all familiar with. And with this bill, the change to them for counties that would have most of their property taxes be exempt is going to be a big payment in March, because we would be receiving those funds from, I believe, the Department of Revenue in February. February 15th is the date in the bill. So I just want to make sure the schools are aware that they're going to have to change the way they do their budgeting as well, a little bit, just because they're used to those funds coming in at different points. And I would stand for any questions.
Great, thank you. Chairman, are you?
Just thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Treasurer, thanks for joining us, and appreciate you being here in Cheyenne and back home. And just that last part, you talked about those different chunks of payments as you described them. But are a lot of those in sublet, are those monthly mineral ad valorem chunks, aren't they? I mean, your property tax for residents, those chunks don't come till the end of the year anyway, once a year. Is that, or maybe twice a year if a taxpayer splits it up twice. So I was a little confused on that, and I'm assuming those are mineral chunks that come. So can you elaborate or educate me on that? Thank you.
Yes, Madam Vice Chairman and Chairman Harshman. So in Sublette County, we are a very mineral heavy county. 95% of our tax base is mineral production ad valorem. And so 5% of it is residential. with that being said, the mortgage companies always pay us twice a year. So of that 5%, I would say at least half have mortgages. So we get a big chunk then right around the 10th of November, and then that second big chunk from the mortgage escrow companies in May. So that's where those two pieces come from. Most people in Sublette County that don't have a mortgage like to pay it all at one time, and they pay it usually in December. And that's why we have that chunk. So it's pretty linear, especially now that we do the monthly ad valorem payments. So there's not nearly the huge spike in November and May that we used to have. It's every month we get that ad valorem payment from the state, and that has made a big difference because we don't have those huge chunks. But we still have large payments that come in November and May. And then, like I said, those people that don't have mortgages that like to pay it all at one time will generally pay it in December.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman?
Thank you. And so those monthly mineral ad valorems that you just get those from the state in one big chunk of money, and then you distribute those by mail to whoever the recipients are. Is that correct?
Treasurer?
Madam Chairman, Mr. Chairman Harshman, yes and no. So the way that those payments come to us, they do come every month. And so when we get them, they're already broken down as far as what district gets what, because it depends on where they were severed. So when we upload those payments, they already have the tax district that needs to get credited those payments. So we don't distribute anything at that point as far as getting a lump sum and then having to break it down into the different tax districts. When we receive it from the Department of Revenue, it's already broken down where it was severed, so we know where the money needs to go.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Further questions for the treasurer? All right, thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, appreciate it.
And sir, I didn't get your name, so if you would introduce yourself and proceed with testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chairman Harshman, members of the committee, my name is Brett Glass, and I'm a homeowner, an engineer, and a businessman in Laramie, Wyoming. And I appreciate the opportunity to testify via Zoom today. Well, assuming that this bill is constitutional, which I'm concerned it might not be, there are some real concerns as to its fairness and what its effects would be. It's often said that Wyoming taxes are a three-legged stool, and this saws off a big chunk of one leg of the stool. And so while I understand that the bringers of the bill have good intentions, and I am all for some form of tax relief, this particular scheme might not be good engineering, and it could have some serious untoward and unexpected effects. Mainly what it does is it replaces property tax, which is based on wealth, with a regressive tax on many of the necessities of life. And so it shifts the tax burden to workers who have not yet bought homes, and in doubly so. Their rent is going to go up if they're renting, assuming that they are, and the bills for things that they buy are going to go up. And right now, my business is already having trouble finding employees that it needs just to get by. This is going to make things worse for us because those people are likely going to leave the state. Not only the existing workers, but also the ones graduating from the University of Wyoming. This could exacerbate the Wyoming brain drain. We're building new dorms at UW, but we're losing our graduates as soon as they graduate to other states because the graduates can't make ends meet here. And I'm worried that this particular scheme could make things worse. It could severely hurt small businesses because not only will we not be able to find workers, but our sales are going to be hurt by increased taxes on everything we sell. And unlike the mineral industry, we wouldn't have a carve out that would protect us from this. The bill, as I mentioned, doesn't exempt rental properties, and so it shifts burdens to renters and also to some other people. I happen to rent a portion of my own home. It's not a single family home because I rent my basement out. And so I would be hit by the restriction in this bill, which says that my own home would not be covered. And many deserving residents who have other, who otherwise don't live in properties which are strictly single family will have the same problem. The city of Laramie has recently changed its zoning so that there is no zone which is entirely single family, and has encouraged the creation of what are called ADUs, accessory dwelling units. And everyone who went along with what the city prompted them to do and built those accessory dwelling units would also no longer get the tax exemption. So this would be another problem. Another factor to consider is that unfortunately municipalities do tend to be greedy. Our local government has been growing far larger than is really necessary, and so they're definitely going to impose the full burden of the additional sales tax that they can. They're even opting for a mill levy on downtown. And with all of these new taxes that affect businesses and retail, local retail is not going to be competitive anymore. It's going to become much cheaper to shop in Colorado than to shop here in Wyoming. So I think we need to shift the burden in a way that benefits our state and boosts our economy. And I'm worried that this could potentially do the opposite. The entities in our state that are undertaxed are really the out-of-state businesses that don't pay their freight for the infrastructure that they use and then take their revenues out of state. And not necessarily minerals businesses, but just any out-of-state businesses that do that. These are the businesses, the entities that we need to find a way to tax for their fair share, whether it's a gross receipts tax or something similar. I'm not an expert on all the possibilities. But I think that that's the correct way to shift things if we're going to do so. Anyway, to sum up, because I know your time is limited, I strongly recommend that this bill not be sent to the floor during this session and that the matter be designated as an interim topic. And I further recommend that the legislature appropriate funds that we can use to bring in expert economists to analyze the likely effects of whatever we're proposing. That way, we'll have a better idea of what will happen, and hopefully we'll be able to avoid untoward effects such as the ones I've mentioned. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Glass. All right. Questions for Mr. Glass? Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Zabrowski, go ahead, come up. If there's anybody else, yes, briefly, and I think everybody who's raised their hand has testified, so we've got some time to work the bill. Mr. Zabrowski, introduce yourself and go and proceed with testimony.
Good morning. My name's Dan Zabrowski. I'm precinct person 8-5 up in Natrona County. Madam Vice Chair and council members, this is a huge concept, a huge change in the way we would look at doing property taxes. And something that's come to mind is we've been, for the last 2 years, looking at giving these little reliefs to people because they're feeling the pressure. The pain out there is severe. So we've been focusing on giving relief, and that's it. I think we need to change our idea of looking at tax reform at this level. This huge of a tax reform actually changes the scope of economic activity, in my belief. I think, back to what I testified last week when Chairman Harshman mentioned I might like something coming out. I truly love the concept. There are, in all the conversations of it, the worries of what this opens up in years down the road, bringing exemptions down, raising taxes. I'm not sure. The way I look at it, that starts to happen, that looks like a double cross to the Wyoming taxpayer. They will, just like with the property tax problem, once the pain gets severe, you're going to feel it. You're going to hear it, just like you are now. You start doing that in the out years, you're going to hear it again from them. So I think that's going to curb that stuff out there in the out years. But the economic activity, you're right. What happens, you transfer straight across the tax burdens, but you're taking it from an immoral tax, which is a property tax. Like I testified before, you never own your home. That's so un-American. and you put it over into a consumption tax, which then you have a choice how you're spending your money, and it may curb some consumption based on that, but that's our choice. What it will do, and this is a measurement we never see when all the bean counters are calculating these taxes and what it's gonna do, they never focus on what economic activity is gonna happen from it. And I think maybe some curbing in the consumption part is gonna get offset by the incredible amount of residential activity. The other, one more point, is the industries that are concerned about the tax increase and in waiting for a rebate. One of the problems we have in Wyoming is a pool of employees. I think this draws people into our state. It's easy, like Mr. Chairman or Chairman Harshman said, explaining his bill, it would make it easier for a younger couple to get into a home. You're going to drop their payment $200 to $300, or being able to qualify is going to be a lot. It's going to be a draw. Our people, as we continue to work on our CTE programs, I think we're going to start keeping some of our people here. And if we can work on that tax structure at this level, I think it's huge. So anyway, I'd stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Zabrowski. All right, thank you. And with that, I will close public comment. Committee, what's your pleasure?
Move the bill.
Bill has been moved by Chairman Harshman. Do I have a second? Seconded by Representative Zwanitzer. On the bill, any amendments? I gotta get it. All right, committee. Page 1. Any amendments? Everybody got their, go ahead. Chairman
Madam
Harshman.
Vice Chair, members, if you could pull out that amendment that I gave you yesterday, I handed out. It's basically all on a front page, and it's got 2 lines on the back page. Do you all have that from yesterday?
I would do somewhere. Why, that one's different. Did they switch me out?
That's the same. Okay.
Go ahead, Mr.
So
Chairman.
I would move this amendment. It grows the exemption. It gives the governor the ability, that's on lines 1 through 10, and then lines, Romanet 2, lines 29 through 34. Policy we had in the 90s when we were moving from 3.5 to 4% sales tax. The governor had the ability, and this, to turn that tax off if we had enough money. And this is that same language. We had this policy in the 90s. It worked well. So if there's excess money in that replacement account in the treasurer's office, the governor can ratchet it down. And then finally, these were all brought to me by members of the House in conversations. And then Romanet 3 at the bottom of the page, if for some reason this goes away, if by statute or by court decree that this exemption goes away, this tax will go to 0. And so you can read that on Roman 3 under, so the paragraph shall be reduced by the department to 0 if for any reason the exemption under 3911 paragraph 43 is unavailable for the tax year. I heard that from members on our floor that if, geez, what if this goes away, then we still have the tax. So those were 3 things I heard. So again, 3 concepts I think I gave you in the handout yesterday with the growth of, and I handed it out to the public yesterday as well, the growth of that exemption on the first part. So there's 3 parts. If you want to divide it up, you could, but I guess before I talk about it, we'll need a second.
I need a, yep, but can I get is anybody going to second the amendment?
Second.
Seconded by Representative Swanser. Discussion on the amendment.
I'll just stand for any questions, Madam Chair. I think everybody kind of understands it. If you have any questions, members.
Any questions, discussion on this? Representative Locke?
So just being clear, that first amendment is the one that basically escalates the 1 million, so it follows that curve on the back, right? And then that second component of that amendment is that it takes it down to, if for some reason it's not implemented, it drops the sales tax back to zero. Now, is that all that this whole group of amendments is actually doing?
Chairman Harshman.
Madam Vice Chair, so that first part, you're right, is that 2% growth of the exemption. And I worked with LSO Fiscal on what would be a conservative, safe number. And, kind of gave the example, my parents' first home was 5,000, I think, or less, and all of us have that experience. And so eventually, all homes will be $1 million homes. I mean, that's the way it's gonna, and so that's that 2% growth of that exemption. And then there's actually, then the next part are lines 29 through 35. That gives the governor the ability to ratchet the tax down if there's enough money in that account. We don't want to grow this to a new LSRA, So if there's enough money in that account, then you turn the tax down. So that's the second one. And you didn't mention that, I think, and I wanted to, and then the third one, you're correct, what you mentioned, it starts on line 36, that if for some reason the exemption, and it carries over to the second page, if for some reason exemption is unavailable, that tax goes to zero.
Representative Locke, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we're really just looking at lines, let me just say, the amendments, this particular amendment is 1 through 10, and then kind of 29 through the back, 1 and 2 on the back page. We're not specifically looking at all of that in between, is that correct?
Representative Locke, at this point, this has been moved at this point, we're looking at all of it, all of this.
Okay.
Unless it's divided. Chairman Harshman.
Madam Vice Chair, those lines like 12 through 27, those are really in the bill. It's just conforming language to make the amendment work. That's all that is, yeah. Thank you.
Further discussion? Discussion on the amendment?
Question?
Question having been called? Do I just do a voice? All those in favor of the proposed amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. The amendment has passed. All right, committee back on the bill. So what other amendments? I'll go page by page unless, I know we've had some suggestions here this morning. Page 2. Page 3. I'd like to discuss on page 3. I think we need to define the associated improved land. I know we've discussed this at length in several of the bills, but we haven't done anything here.
Director.
I think the director and the assessor.
Do you want a definition to be put in right now?
Yeah, well, yeah,
I don't know how to grab that. I don't disagree with you.
so,
They have one somewhere.
Madam
So-
Vice Chair.
did the assessors have a suggestion, or the director? I know we've had this discussion, but if we're working this bill, I think I would like us to define what the associated improved land is. Ms. Huxtable, will you come up? Director, will you come up? Thank you both. Ms. Huxtable.
Madam Vice Chair, so we've had a lot of discussion about the topic of associated improved land, and we asked the Department of Revenue for some help in downloading some data. We took a look at that data, it needs to have some cleanup before we can share some facts and figures with you. The problem that we have is that there's a variety of ways that we legally can value land. And I talked about it a little bit briefly before. You may have an MRA model, you may have a straight per acre model, you may have a site. There's a lot of places across the state where it doesn't matter what the size of the land is, it sells for the same price. And so the challenges, and I'm sure the department can talk about this, is figuring out how to value an acre of land if that was to be the choice. And so at this point, the assessors are talking about just making the associated improved residential land to make sure that if it's coded as residential improved land, if it's on the account where the dwelling is and the land is owned by this in the same name as the person that owns the dwelling, because you've mentioned mobile home in this as a definition for the structure, and certainly mobile homes can sit on land that they don't own, so we want to clarify that, then we would be acceptable with that at this point, because there's not a good way for us to break it down any other way and to get the CAMA system that we have now to be able to do that math in the background and calculate that. We think there may be in the future, we may need to look at our counts, maybe decide whether a 640 acre parcel really is all residential improved, or some of that is really vacant land, and that would take some time for us to look at our data. And we just don't have that information for you right now.
Okay, and so you just said something, and for my own clarification, you said we're fine with that. Were you referring to the 1 acre designation?
Madam Vice Chair, no, we're talking about using the language associated improved, but we would encourage putting residential in there, associated residential improved. We do have abstract codes within our system that designate between a residential improved and a residential vacant. And as long as the intent is that you're going to include the residential improved land, we think we could live with that.
Okay, so that's the word.
Is anything further, Director?
Madam Co-Chair, the only thing I would also encourage you to do is add that the associated residential land is under the same ownership as the dwelling.
Right. Owner. Okay. Got it. Any further questions? Okay, thank you. So, Chairman Harshman.
Okay, on page 3, I just move that we add the word residential after associated on line 8. After associated on line 8, just insert the word residential. Associated, and we've had this discussion with all 8 bills we've worked.
Yes.
Associated residential improved land. And then-
If owned, if,
And something we gotta put, and owned by, or something.
if owned by.
But let's do, yeah. If owned by
If
the
owned by
homeowner.
the occupant.
Owned by the. What's that? If owned by the homeowner.
Okay.
I think we're gonna get a little correction, need a little help. Associated residential improved land.
Madam Vice Chairman, we had some language we brought up that, and the associated improved land if the land is owned by the owner of the dwelling. So that you have a correlation between the land and the dwelling.
I would say, I haven't got a second yet on my word residential, but I would, got a second.
Seconded by Representative
I
Locke.
would consider that friendly,
Indeed,
if it's owned by the
the owner of the
Dwelling.
dwelling.
Just want to make sure our staff has that. Do you guys have that wording? Because you're going to be writing this.
Are you good?
Are you guys good? Ms. Jeffrey?
Okay, and Ms. Huxtable has a copy of that language as well, so we'll get that to you. Okay. So I think we got that one. Anything further on page 3?
Well, we got to vote on it.
Oh, gosh, geez. Long days. So all those in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That amendment has passed. Back on the bill, page 3, anything further? Page 4. Page 5,
Madam Vice Chair.
Chairman Harshman.
Madam Vice Chair, just in conversations with the mineral industry about that idea of the timeliness of this rebate is one issue. And so this is going to be a concept amendment. I think our staff can work this out, but really the idea that, that this could be remitted and then basically on a year-round basis, that it doesn't have to be at the end of the year. After their sale is complete and they've remitted the tax, they can apply for the rebate. And that's really the concept amendment.
Okay, and so, and so it wouldn't
You have
be
to wait
that
till
the,
the
it
end
wouldn't
of
be
the
that the revenue, the department has to have it in 30 days. It's just that it could be applied for at any time.
The concept amendment that is that it would be applied for, and then, if we wanted to put that it's remitted in 45 days from the time it's received, that's it. I mean, I'm just thinking your timing of your work,
Director Henson?
you get a remittance of 700,000 on a new dump truck or whatever at the mine.
Director Henson?
Madam Co-Chair, Chairman Harshman, I think the first item that we will need to address is on page 5, line 18, because this,
I got another amendment for that.
okay, all right. So we don't know if there's any money left for
Yeah.
these refunds until we get past that first line, Romanet 2. As far as the administration and sending out refunds immediately, our fiscal note, this is the only administrative cost that we believe this bill will require. So we were looking at one person to assist with this, but it sounds like this will be an ongoing monthly where they will need to provide information to the Department of Revenue. So we still have to prop up a new system for them to apply for that information. It's going to be incumbent on that taxpayer to apply and provide us with the information. And then, if I'm understanding correctly, we'll have the authority to make payment in the form of a refund of those taxes paid on a monthly basis. The bill does provide us with the opportunity to promulgate rules, so I definitely think this refund program, we can address the majority of that timing aspect within the rulemaking process. But that being said, also keep in mind that the Department of Revenue has no authority to audit. That authority in property taxation, sales tax, it all lies with the Department of Audit, and it's specific to the payment of tax. One thing that you may want to consider is on these refunds, specific on this one, on this bill, should the Department of Audit have the ability to audit the applications for a refund of sales tax? Otherwise, I mean, we work, all of our tax structure is based on an honest report, and they remit the tax owed, but we don't know the background behind that information. So these are just some of the things to administer this refund piece that I would ask that the committee consider.
Thank you, Director. Any questions?
Oh, thank you, that helps.
Thank you. And so the concept,
So the concept amendment is that, and I'll get to this first part, I think we got a way to front load that. I've looked at what we do in other situations with some money, and I think the director brought it up, but the first idea is to not wait to the end of the year. I mean, we heard that. So the concept would be that, you know,
Ongoing
that you
basis.
could apply year round and, you know, and we could set a date that, you know, the department will get that back to them within 60 days, a resolution within 60 days. So they don't have to wait to the end of the year. So that's the first concept.
Okay, is there a second on that conceptual amendment?
Second.
Seconded by Representative, oh my gosh, Northrop. My brain's going. Okay, so discussion. Discussion on that concept amendment. Representative Locke.
So just a note, and I'm not telling anybody anything they don't know, but just, we've just got to remember, there's going to be a complexity because of that first line, because we don't want to take that away, any remaining, right? So it will add a level of complexity for the department to say, making any kind of advanced delivery, refund. Thank you.
Chairman Harshman.
In my next amendment, I think we'll address that, you know, on the cash flow of it. Thank you.
All right, further discussion? All right, on the amendment, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no? That amendment is adopted.
Okay,
Back on the bill, Chairman Harshman.
Yeah, Madam Vice Chair, the next amendment really, and it was in conversations with the mineral industry, you know, so now that we make this so you can access it and get your refund in 60 days, you're gonna have to have some cash in there. And we've got other areas in the language, and I've got the language I provided to staff, but basically, Madam Chair, the amendment would be at the front of Roman 2, or worked in there, our legal staff will work it in there, but the state auditor is authorized to borrow from the Legislative Stabilization Reserve Account amount not to exceed $10 million to meet the obligations of the Department of Revenue that comes with this paragraph. That's really the concept, but I'm kind of borrowing that from existing statute that we already do in a different program. So it'd allow basically the department to front load that with a loan from the LSRA up to 10 million.
And it would be a loan?
Yeah, that's what, yeah. And as the revenues come in, you pay it back.
Okay. Questions, discussion on that, Representative Locke?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So conceptually, just making sure I understand, so we may front load this, so over time, let's just say that it drops down, let's just say we're breaking even, let's put it that way, on that account. Is that something where we continually backload that for that, or is that, since it's a loan, is that one of those situations where, let's say we front load it once, but we don't make enough, if you will, from the sales tax? How does that work moving forward? Does that turn out to, oh, well, now we can't refund? I'd just like to understand that process. I'm not sure I'm quite getting that.
Chairman Harshman?
Madam Vice Chair, I think, you know, this example is used throughout state government. It's a cash flow issue is really what I think the bill is written conservative enough that we're gonna have enough cash to pay our bills in this, pay the exemption bill and pay the mineral tax bill. So it's more of a cash flow issue. Out trying to solve that problem.
Further follow-up, Representative Locke?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So really, I'm going back to the word, really a loan, for lack of a better term.
Chairman Harshman, I don't know, he said a loan?
Yeah, the amendment is that the state auditor is authorized to borrow from the LSRA amount not to exceed 10 million at any one time for the obligations of the Department of Revenue for this section. And our legal staff will make sure it all works, but that's the.
And as you said, it's kind of a cash flow. I mean, the whole expectation will be that the money's generated. Further,
Is there a second? Second.
oh, I need a
Yeah, there
second.
was a second.
I do need a second, so I have a second in Representative Northrop. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That amendment has been adopted. Back on the bill, page 6. Oh, go ahead. Come up, Director Henson. What would you like to let us know?
Madam Co-Chair, on page 6, lines 11 through 15, speaks to if the amount available to distribute under the section is insufficient. So I think we may need to strike that language in a follow-up to your prior motion.
Yes, got that. Thank you. So do I have a motion?
So moved, starting on line 11 with the word
If,
if through the end of 15.
do I have a second?
Second.
Motion's been seconded by Representative Northrup. Any further discussion on that? Representative Locke?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, I want to understand why we would be striking that, because it's very critical to, that we're trying to actually create a balanced budget to some degree in here. And this is a situation where, if I'm understanding this correctly, if we don't have the funds to fully refund, I guess I feel like we're dropping a sideboard here, and I want to understand why we think that's a good idea, because I think we need robust sideboards in here, or this has the potential to run amok. And I want to be very cautious in this case. And I feel like we're dropping a sideboard out right here.
Representative Locke, the amendment that we just passed is the sideboard instead of this, because we just said that it will be backed up by $10 million from the LISRA. So we don't intend that the amount available to distribute would be insufficient, and that we use this sideboard or this process because of the amendment we just passed. Further discussion? All right. All those in favor of this amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no? No. The amendment has passed and is adopted. Back on the bill.
Madam Vice Chair.
Chairman Harshman.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Members, the rest of this bill now, really starting on line 7, or excuse me, page 7, you can see at the very top where it says 39-15-203, that's sales tax. And this is the local pennies, right? Earlier in the bill, we've added the 2 new state pennies to pay for this $1 million exemption. But this is this local penny, and we're trying to thread this needle of how you approve it, how you keep it, and really what this language does is it allowed individual municipalities to vote on it, and then individual municipalities to keep it. And kind of, it works, but I've heard, particularly when you flip over to page 8, that piece, the new language, that would allow a resolution by an individual. So I think, okay, so then you kind of go and working with the local governments, because none of us, it's not my intent to cut local government funding. That's where the rubber meets the road. And so then there's this, you're trying to thread this needle, making sure that locals have the ability with their 5th penny that, as you heard today, 96 out of 99 municipalities, 21 out of 23 counties have. So I just want to talk about this issue. I have an amendment that I had staff draft up yesterday that would basically get rid of these last 6 pages of the bill, and it would make that 5th penny permanent, but it would give them an opt-out. So Park County and Sublette County don't have to do it. Don't have to do it. And then, but it would get rid of that 3rd local penny. Right now, locals have 3 pennies they can access. And if we made this, hold it like this. I better be careful here. Maybe I'll do it. Yeah, better do it like this. So if you make one permanent and get rid of the 3rd one. Now, and so then I think it protects Wyoming taxpayers. So the ceiling right now for pennies, the absolute ceiling in Wyoming is 7 pennies. Right, it's 4 state, 3 local. That's the ceiling. And so the idea then, if we amended this to say, we're going to raise 2 penny state sales tax, but we're going to take 1 local penny away. So the absolute ceiling it goes from 7 to 8, not 7 to 9. And that provides protection a long run for the taxpayer. but it also provides protection, I think, and assurance for local governments that 96 out of 99 are dependent on today to buy police cars and provide services to their people, because that's where the rubber meets the road, local government. And so I've got that amendment drafted, but I wanted to just kind of, so I'm not making an amendment yet, but I think it's an important issue. This is a real thread in the needle. Whenever you make law, there's always things you got to repercussions. So anyway, I just wanted Madam Vice Chair to open that discussion a little bit.
Thank you, Chairman Harshman. So discussion on those concepts,
On that idea.
Representative Luck.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm definitely against imposing that 3rd cent. I don't think that's a good move because no matter what happens at those local levels, I believe it needs to go to the electorate in the story, and they need to make those decisions at that local level. So I don't want to impose that. Now, I understand that you may have the situation where you try to, you say, okay, well, they could opt out via a vote. I understand that. But I think the minute we start throwing in that 3rd cent, we have multiple impacts here. First of all, we're automatically heaping a 3 cent on top of the local electorate, on the people, on the taxpayer. The second thing is that 3rd cent has a potential of having other, even more adverse effects on businesses. So there's lots of things we're doing here. We're definitely turning this from tax relief to a tax, to additional tax and a tax impact on our taxpayers. So I'm not convinced that there's not even larger, we continue to, this already is a very significant change to the way we do taxes and has so many unintended consequences that we don't fully understand yet. I'm actually an advocate of the interim on this, to be honest with you. Not that I don't think the concept is great, I really do, because I am a fan of this. But I think in this particular case, I'm against this change specifically because we're just taking that next step, that extra penny, and I don't think we should do that, so.
Did you want to respond to that, Chairman Harshman?
No, I just wanted, I think, have some discussion on this issue, I think, and you try to thread the needle. And so if you pass this bill, then I think locals are going to go, how's the 5th penny, going to work? Which they're already doing across state, basically 100% of the cities, 96 out of 99 are doing. Okay, I just wanted to visit a little bit about that, yeah.
Question on the bill?
What?
Oh, is that too soon?
Yes.
Yeah,
We-
I don't know.
Do you want to make an amendment, Chairman Harshman?
I have the amendment, and I think probably, I think I will throw it out there for the committee, and Madam Vice Chair, I just think it's an important issue, and we can vote it up or vote it down. And then,
I'm gonna look at it for 2 minutes. This is great. I like it.
What do you think about doing?
Seen it.
no, nobody's.
No. And the print's a little light there, buddy. Yeah, can you make it darker? Sure, let's throw out a full-take amendment at 9:50.
I'm not, I just want to show this to you, Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you.
So, Madam Vice Chair, if you have the amendment in front of you, so see that 3915-204? That's the 3 local pennies. That's all this language is, and you can see then it's gonna take it, and we're gonna take the optional down and the special purpose, so you're gonna make only 2 local pennies. That's what happens here. So there's 3 right now, and you'd reduce that to 2.
And I thought that was an important concept. That's kind of why I called on you after Representative Locke spoke, was it's not going to the 3rd penny.
No, 3rd penny would go away. 3rd penny would be deleted from statute. But that fifth local or the 1st local penny would become then an opt-out for local government. So if you flip over to the 2nd page of the amendment, on line 11, you can see that 3%, those are the local pennies on line 11, page 2, is now reduced to 2. So you get rid of one local penny. And then that new paragraph B, that local government can opt out of that penny if they don't want it. People don't want it, they come to their local representatives, you opt out. You know, and we know we have 2 counties right now that don't have it in Park and Sublet. Okay, the distribution is the distribution of this is the same. The 100% minus a little administration fee goes to flipping over to page 3. Again, you can see the reduction. These are for special purpose, and so you can see it goes from a potential 2 to 1. So these are reducing those local pennies. And really, that's how it affects this bill. You basically would, I could walk it through the current bill, but and I can, if you flip over, members, to page 7 of the bill where all this local penny stuff starts, it would basically remove all of page 7. It would remove 8 and remove most of 9, and then it would start the insert. That's where the amendment starts going in on page 9. And so that's where it goes, and then you'd flip over, same thing with the use tax. That starts on the bottom of page 10. It just repeats itself because all this stuff is repeated because of sales tax and use tax. But haven't moved the amendment. I just wanted to show you that I've got it out there and let local government know, I guess we've got that out there in our conversations with them. So,
Yes, I think that's important, Chairman Harshman. You followed this concept up because of the concerns of local and county governments. I mean, that's what, this is in response to their concerns.
absolutely.
Representative Bear.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Okay, so I'd like to just kind of put this in terms that I can understand, because as you throw out the 3rd penny and the 5th penny, you lose me often. So I'm just going to put it in terms that I can understand. So in one column is the current system. We have 4 state pennies, and we have 3 local.
Correct.
For a max of 7. Under this new system with this amendment, we would have 4 state, and then we would have 2 new pennies that replace the property tax.
Which are state pennies.
And then 2, we're reducing down to 2 for the local.
That's
for a total of 8. Within the 2 local, based on paragraph B, they can elect to remove one of those. Is that accurate?
Chairman Harshman.
Everything is accurate till the very last sentence.
Okay.
It says really good. So those 2 local, everything is said, so you're down to just 2 local. That first local would be permanent, but they can opt out if they don't want it. It would be permanent around the state like it has been, really. I mean, we've been voting it in Natrona County for quarter century or whatever, as long as it's been there. But you can opt out. And then this one is still, of course, vote for specific purpose or general observation, vote of the people. But the 3rd one disappears, so there can be no 3rd local penny.
Representative Bear. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. So I think just different terms, we're saying the same thing. That first penny of local, it's permanent based on this.
That's correct.
The way this is written, unless you vote to make it optional.
Or even the city council or county commission can say, we don't need it, we don't want it.
Right. So that one can go away and you'd be back down to the 7 cents.
Right.
I think I get it. I think I get it.
Further questions, discussion? And do I have any further amendments?
Madam Vice Chair, I think we just save this amendment if this bill makes it to the floor. And then we can talk about it amongst the whole body. It'll be interesting. So I'm not going to bring this amendment at this time, but I wanted to show it to you and show local government that we've got it ready if we.
If we need. All right. Representative Locke, go ahead.
2 other topics. First one being with the bill that's here, page 8, I know in discussion, we had some discussions on whether that additional text should be removed. I know we had talked about that at some point, and I wanted to talk about that with the bringer. Just if, Chairman, if you could just give us your thoughts on that.
Chairman Harshman, as far as the language, that's in the bill a couple times, but like the bottom of page 8,
Yeah, that's that new language. I think if you wanted to make that amendment, I think it'd be a good amendment. Or I'll make the amendment to take out the new language on the bottom of page 8. And I think there's conforming amendment with the use tax later on. I don't know what page we can find it, but, and this is to keep the tax going. Just leave it as it is now. That's what we do, is get rid of this new language. I thank you for that reminder. I forgot, and I have it crossed off in my,
is there a second on that amendment?
Second, if Representative Locke doesn't want it, sure.
Second by Representative Zwolitzer. Further discussion, Representative Locke?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just want to make sure, so this leaves the process as it currently is, correct? That's my understanding.
100%, yeah.
Thank you.
Further discussion on the amendment? Hearing none, all those in favor of the amendment say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That amendment is adopted. So further amendments. And of course, that does go along, that's in the bill twice, so that would be for both of them. Representative Locke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this is, I apologize, I'm going to use the chairman's words. This is more of a conceptual amendment because I wasn't sure where and how to insert this, but we talked about this, and I do think this is very important. And that's making sure that in some way a cap is applied to the assessment values, because I think the reality of this, you get 3 or 4 years similar to what we've seen here, and that escalation factor that we've put in there, there's no sideboard for that. So I think we need a capping function of some kind similar to what's in 45. Is the answer 45 is the cap on the assessment? So, and I just didn't know where to insert that in here, so, but I think we need it. Well, I'm confident we need it, or else the assessments can just go blast through that escalation factor so fast we won't know what hit us. Thank you. And so I would like to open that discussion.
Discussion, committee, Chairman Harshman.
Madam Vice Chair and Representative Locke, I agree 100%. And I think we just try to roll with 45. Could you amend the cap into this bill? Probably, but I don't think we want to do that, today. I think that'd be a floor discussion if the will of the body is like, hey, we want to send this one kind of bill across to the other side. I think we have that discussion with our peers on the floor if it makes sense. But I agree with you 100%.
Representative Bear, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I agree with the chairman about taking it to the floor for the decision, but one suggestion would be to make it a trigger bill based on 45. And that would ensure that that meets the needs of those of us who would like to make sure that that sideboard is on there. So just an idea.
Further discussion? Is there any further amendments for this bill? Go ahead, Director Henson. We have 3 minutes till we're on the floor.
Madam Co-Chair, I would respectfully request $288,000 for the one-time programming money for the refund. And then since the amendment makes this a year-round process, I would ask for one employee FTE, and an estimated cost of that would be $175,000 for the biennium for both years.
That's true. Madam Chairwoman, I think that is an excellent suggestion and an amendment that I will probably bring on Committee of the Whole on the floor, but not at this time.
Okay. All right, any further amendments? All right. Committee, Question on the bill? Any
Just further discussion.
further discussion? Go ahead.
Yeah, thank
Representative
you,
Byron.
Madam Chairwoman. You know, I think it's right for the body to hear this on the floor, but, and I'm certainly going to be in favor to get it out of committee, but, you know, there are a lot of large concepts that we're discussing and a lot of large amendments we're bringing in and out, and I think it's worth getting to the floor, but when we get up there, I want the good bringer to know that I think it'll be spicy up there.
Representative Northrup?
Thank you. I agree with Representative Byron. I think that it's great education for the rest of the people on the floor to be able to work this bill and be able to hear it. And I agree, it'll be a spicy discussion, so I'll get it out of committee.
Any more spice, Representative Locke?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Maybe, but so all the things that are being said, the spicy part, that I just want to throw out a few of the concepts that we've heard here and make sure this is all on the record from that perspective, because what we're looking at is, it's not a forklift change, it's 1,000 forklift change to what we're doing when you really look at this. And again, I want to say this in the context of, I'm actually somewhat of a fan of the concept of me being able to control my taxes, my tax burden, if you will. That concept is definitely appealing to me. And I think it has benefits. I think the fact that it has not passed through the interim, the only issue is we haven't been able to shake the trees hard enough to understand the full consequences. For example, if we go out there and we recognize, we hit this fact that property tax estimates were based on linear cost models and those kinds of things. Then not taking into consideration what the three speakers who started this day with, and the potential impacts to some of our really key and core industries. You know, we have some backup to that, but if the books aren't balancing quite right with the swapping of these two taxes, it has some fairly significant potential. And so I think those are the potential, and I'm going to say potential because I'm not smart enough to have thought through even close to a fraction of the potential impacts. But the potential unintended consequences need an interim to really shake the trees properly. That's my opinion on the bill. At the same time, credit to all the work that was done here, because it has been really a very interesting approach. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Locke. All right, and it's 10:01. So if any comments, very briefly, Representative Storr.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I would just recall the comments made last evening about the importance of deferring this conversation to the Revenue Committee and the work we've been doing here. And I just want to own what this committee has been doing all interim on this subject matter as well. I will reserve my other comments should the bill move forward.
Thank you, Representative Storr. Chairman Harshman, bring us home.
Okay, trying to bring us home here. I think everybody just pause, take a breath for a minute. This is one of like 12 exemption bills in the House and Senate. Because, you know, we know our Constitution says you have value to full value, but it also says the legislature can provide exemptions. So we've been trying to work the exemption route. And all of us have, everybody here. Representative Locke brought a couple exemption bills. Everybody's doing exemptions. There's Senate files that have a 300,000 exemption and pays for it out of the LSRA every year. The question is how you pay for it. That's the first question. This bill pays for it with 2-cent sales tax, which frankly is passed on to about 10 to 15% of it's passed on to out-of-state visitors. I mean, we're probably the #1 state in the union that does a great job of that. So don't get into this complicated thing. It's an exemption that's paid for with a sales tax, not the LSRA, not paid on the backs of local governments without a backfill, or not, paid somehow out of the general fund. It's paid for, we pay for it, and again, 10 to 15% are out-of-staters. And then I think that doesn't even go into the property rights issue. A lot of us have discussed that, and I think, and we've heard from our constituents. And then I think just the history of this. 1869, when we're a territory and we start doing property taxes, there are no other taxes. They don't have sales tax in those days. You don't remit it, send it to the department. It just wasn't a setup until the 30s. when we changed our constitution. So I think we can move out of the 1800 tax structure. That's really what we're basing all this on. Now, do I want to try to unwind the 80 special districts in Bighorn County? No way. Just keep people, there's a lot of history there, and they've done it for their local reasons. But we can pay that back with a 2-penny sales tax. And we know in Wyoming, it's not that regressive. It's not, and I understand regressivity. But we don't tax rent, we don't tax groceries, we don't tax medicine, right? And many other items go all the way through it. And we know we have one of the lowest. And then finally, I just say that on other industries, our golden goose we're gonna keep whole. And then when you say, well, these other industries, but you look at, the handout I gave you, even with these other 2 pennies, we're lower in New Mexico, a little wind development, pipeline development, New Mexico and Colorado, a little bit in Texas, they're at 8.2. Kansas puts up a few windmills, more than us, 8.75. And these states all have corporate income taxes and double the property taxes and a higher sales tax than us. And Oklahoma puts up a few windmills and has a few pipelines in Cushing. And so we're still going to be very competitive. I think the thing for us is we've got to get this housing thing. I think Mr. Sobrowski said it, we're going to knock $200-300 off every payment, every monthly payment. We're going to get our young people an opportunity to own a home. This is just one part of it, and move this thing forward. So like all things we do in this state, it's an exemption, but we're going to pay for it. So I appreciate everybody's work and everybody here. And we all care a lot about Wyoming. That's why we're here. And I encourage your aye vote to move this forward, because I think one of the things too, let me just finish, Representative Oakley. They're up there, they're just shaking hands right now. They're not even there yet. I think the other thing, push it to the interim. Run another Tax 2000 study. And I just tell you, that's a big old lie to think that we got a lot of time. You don't have any time. We make laws right now. We don't do anything in the interim. Sit around and talk about stuff. And there were plenty of interim bills didn't make it into law. So I think our people need this now and want this. And if they need it and want it, that's what we're here for, not to take it to the interim. So
Thank you.
So thank you for your patience with my long comments, and I appreciate all your work. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman Harshman. Question having been called, Ms. Jeffers, please call the roll.
Happy to. Representative Bear.
Aye.
Representative Byron.
Aye.
Representative Locke. Representative Northrup.
Aye.
Representative Oakley.
Aye.
Representative Storer.
No.
Representative Strzok.
Aye.
Representative Zwanitzer.
Aye.
And Chairman Harshman.
Aye.
The bill passes 8 ayes and 1 no.
We having committee Thursday or not?
Thank you, everybody. We're adjourned.